Hi, everybody. Good to have you here on a Tuesday. Thanks for being here. This is Banfield. I'm Ashleigh, and there were two people in court today that have a lot of detractors and a lot of supporters. The first one, the most recent of a very similar crime, the guy we now know is Tyler Robinson. He showed up in a weird way via video link for his very first court appearance. This is the guy that police say set his sight on Charlie Kirk and unleashed that one deadly bullet, effectively an assassination in front of 3,000 people. This is how he showed up. And I know you're probably looking at that thinking, is that a bulletproof vest? It is not. It is a suicide prevention vest. This is the way most people, Brian Koberger included, are usually trotted in when it's as high profile as this kind of killing is. This is to make sure he doesn't hang himself, because you can't tie that thing into any kind of knot. So he very silently basically just said, yeah, that's who I am, that's my name. But he doesn't have a lawyer yet, which I thought was so crazy. They're working on it. Trust me, he's going to have a lawyer. He could have what we assume to be a public defender, but some high-profile lawyer may come out of the woodwork yet and say, I want this case. It's a stinker. I think he's going to have a really tough uphill battle, this one. Right? But I also see a few things that can mitigate him out of the death penalty. I'm going to talk about all of that in this case. I also want to talk to you about the text messages. So some of them were read today, but I'm going to read the rest of them. It's fascinating getting into this guy's head if the text messages belong to him. But if effectively the police say they're the messages between him and his roommate, who we now know to be his trans lover. Important because the Charlie Kirk question, in the middle of which he was murdered, was about trans shooters. Okay, so it's really important that don't call me political. Anyway, the text messages are off the chain. I'm going to read them all for you, unedited. And when we come to like bullets with messages on them, police say that Tyler wrote messages on his bullets, you know, hey, catch, fascist, right? Well, somebody else who allegedly wrote messages on his bullets was Luigi Mangione. They're very similar, these cases, except Luigi's super handsome and has legions of girls who love him, many of them showing up outside court today. Some of them, you know, yelling all sorts of anti-capitalist messages and free Luigi, etc. But lots of others have all these heart emojis in their fundraising appeals for him. But this was the scene outside of the New York court. Healthcare is, you know, human right, and a lot of people who say free Luigi, you know, I don't know if they believe he didn't do the killing, or if they think he did the killing, but he should have, because it's what we believe was right. I'm getting a little tired of saying it, although it is becoming my mantra. There are two things that I know to be true in this world, and that is that puppies are cute and murder is bad. Do not put a but at the end of murder is bad. There is no but. Murder is bad, but this guy, right? I don't care what your message is. This is America. And we don't live by summary executions by somebody who decides to be judge, jury, and executioner for everybody else, right? That's not what we do. So if you're a free Luigi guy, are you going to be a free Tyler guy? Because none of that should be happening. No, not if it's a principle. Evidence, that's a whole other ball of wax. And that I have for you tonight, lots of it. In fact, we learned a lot about the man who's being charged with the murder of Charlie Kirk today, a lot. And we learned a lot about the premeditated execution that police say he committed before leading them on a 33-hour manhunt. Like this little piece of information, the assassin was in a pretty tough spot. On the one hand, he had to ditch the rifle that he used in order to get away undetected, but on the other hand, he needed to retrieve that rifle so that there would be nothing to lead investigators to him. He got the first part right. He ditched the rifle, and he got away. Apart from a few surveillance pictures and crowdsourced videos, he was pretty much undetected. He had even ditched his shooting clothes. But going back for the gun, that was a huge risk. There was a police car that was parked right nearby. And in the end, he decided he had to leave it, hoping that it would go unnoticed in the brush. And everything I just said is public knowledge tonight, because investigators gave us the evidence. They said they did find the rifle, and those photos and videos were seen by the only two people in the world the suspect couldn't gaslight his own parents. Tyler James Robinson appeared virtually today from the Utah County Jail. This is what it looked like in the courtroom. You already saw what it looked like from his vantage point. He's sitting in a room in the jail with the suicide vest. This was his very first court appearance, if you call that an appearance. We do nowadays, right? The virtual ones like this. These are virtual appearances, but they're his first appearance. And this is the first appearance since his mom and dad and his family friend persuaded him to give himself up last Thursday. A day and a half after Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck and bled out in front of 3,000 people, including kids. That matters. You're going to find out in just a minute why. Like, really matters that there were kids there. Robinson appeared before the judge today by this video uplink, and he was wearing, yes, that green suicide prevention smock. And he said nothing, really, as the judge read off all the charges filed earlier by the Utah prosecutors. If you haven't seen the list yet, it's important. It's not one that you ever want to hear attributed to you. Aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, 2 counts each of obstructing justice and witness tampering, and violent offense committed in the presence of a child. With the charges came a breathtaking 10-page account of the evidence gathered in just the past 5 days. Almost all of it provided by Tyler Robinson himself. Much of it in the form of detailed text messages to his roommate, who's also his romantic partner. And I'm going to start reading now. And if you are scrolling on your phone right now, or you're busy making dinner or doing anything else, I'm going to say you might want to stop and read along with me. Because if prosecutors are right, it is rare that we have a first-person narrative from someone who has just allegedly played assassin on the night of the killing itself. Okay, ready? I might want to pour that drink I always suggest too. Here's Robinson. He starts off this way. This is to the roommate. I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a while. A little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you. You aren't the one who did it, right? Says the roommate. Robinson says, I am. I'm sorry. Roommate says, I thought they caught the person. Robinson says, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude and then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering. Roommate asks one question. Why? Tyler says, why did I do it? Roommate says, yeah. Robinson says, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. Roommate goes back to the important question here, which is, how long have you been planning this? Robinson, a bit over a week. I believe I can get close to it, but there's a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. Robinson goes on to say, I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. He says IDEK, which is I don't even know. I don't even know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? The only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see, quote, notices bulge, UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke. All right, I'm gonna have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. I don't know, I think that was a $2,000 scope. And then Robinson says, delete this exchange. Robinson goes on to say, my dad wants photos of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle, and it's very unique. He's calling me right now, not answering. Robinson carries on. Since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. Robinson again. I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff. Robinson, you're all I worry about, love. Now the roommate answers for the first time in a while and says, I'm much more worried about you. Robinson says, don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent. That last little bit's important because that's going to end up, as you'll see, as a charge. Don't say anything. Don't talk to the police. That long exchange began, the state alleges, when the roommate found a note that Tyler Robinson said could be found under his computer keyboard. And the note reads, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it, end quote. As for that rifle, the prosecutors say they recovered DNA that is consistent with Tyler Robinson's. As for the court hearing, the only thing actually decided was to hold the next court hearing, September 29th. Tyler Robinson did not even have a lawyer. Nobody representing him here. Somebody said they're working to get him one. Stood up in front of the judge, said, I think you know why I'm here, but, you know, I'm not here on the record as his lawyer, but we're looking for one for him. Looking for a public defender. And yeah, he qualifies as indigent. That's what the judge said. So it appears a public defender will start things off. I don't know if it'll stay that way. I don't know if some other big, high-priced lawyer will come in and say, I think I want to do this one because it's probably going to have to be pro bono. I'm joined now by a friend of the show and one of the sharpest legal minds in the business. Judge Tarlika Nunes-Navarro is a former judge, former prosecutor, and currently the dean of the St. Thomas University College of Law. Judge, it's good to have you here on a day like this. How damning are those texts, the ones that I just read out? Because that's all I have right now.
Well, good evening, Ashleigh. This is a tragic, tragic case. My condolences to Erica and the children, and also to the family of the defendant. This is horrible for everyone. How damning are these text messages? Honestly, as a former defense attorney, I cringe hearing them. I just see element after element after element. Witness, obstruction of justice. We have witness tampering. We have lack of remorse. Covering up picking up the rifle, just going on and on about his grandpa's rifle. That's what he's worried about. I mean, it's damning after damning after damning. It shows a direct admission of guilt and certainly will be used in the death penalty sentencing as aggravators for lack of remorse.
So then let's talk about the other side, because I see just a big old mountain of evidence against this guy. The premeditation, the callousness, the carelessness. I mean, careless doesn't count when they're looking at aggravators and mitigators, but look at him here in the suicide vest. There was reporting as well that his parents had to talk him out of taking his life before going in to report himself to the sheriff. How much of that will his defense side be able to work into his case, saying, look, he's 22 years old. He got radicalized by his feet. He came from a good family. They were Trump-loving, Trump-supporting. He was not this leftist that everybody makes him out to be. He somehow was taken that way by the feet. Will they be able to do something like that to establish some kind of diminished capacity to mitigate down from death?
That's going to be an uphill battle for them. When we look at a death penalty case, we look at aggravators and mitigators. So we're talking about the mitigation here. And, you know, you have a 22-year-old, yes, that's mitigation, but you have a 22-year-old who knows what he did. He knows that it was a crime. He's intentionally trying to cover it up. He had premeditation. This was not an accident. So, you know, an insanity defense is not going to work because an insanity defense requires you to not understand right or wrong. So that's going to be an uphill battle on the mitigation side.
Yeah. For sure, insanity is off the table. There is no shot there. And there's the picture in the middle of us to prove that he was running for cover, which is the mere definition of knowing something's wrong, when you're running away to try to secret yourself and secret the gun away. Yeah, you know right from wrong. Insanity is off the table. But what about those other gradations? State to state, they call it different things, but it's effectively the guy was somewhat mentally ill, and it should factor in to death penalty or no death penalty. penalty. Again, it's all in the mitigation, because I think this guy is never going to skate from a guilty verdict here. I really don't, not with the evidence we've learned so far, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. What about that diminishing aspect? And again, it's different in every state. I don't know what it is in Utah, but diminished capacity is often what we hear.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to hear about it. That's all the defense really has. As a prior defense attorney, you know, we can't pick our facts. So they have really nothing else to utilize in the mitigation. This is a damning case. There's a ton of evidence, and the mitigation is going to be slim, and they have to use the fact that, you know, he is very careless, but at the same time, he was incredibly premeditated. The intent was there, the motive was there, and it's going to be an uphill battle on diminished capacity, I have to tell you.
Let me ask you something, Judge. Are they going to more than likely have his own family members testify against him? Because that would be one of the most, as a mom, that would be the most painful thing to see, bringing family members in to point the finger.
Like I said, this is a sad case for both families, all families involved. I imagine that the family will be subpoenaed to testify, and they will have to come in. They may be hostile, but it doesn't appear so. The parents convinced him to turn himself in, and they did the right thing here. And I think they will be called as witnesses and have to testify against their son, yes.
It's easy for us to say they did the right thing, but as a mother, you sort of put yourself in those shoes and think, could I turn my son over to the state for an execution? It's hard, and I don't know where our viewers are. We're all over the map in our politics in this little crime community that we have on this program, and it doesn't matter what your politics are. I feel for Brian Koberger's family. They weren't the killers. I feel for this guy's family. I feel for Luigi Mangione's family, the families of, you know, of people who either did or are alleged to have done terrible things, didn't do those things, and yet they find themselves in the worst predicament and the most painful, you know, situation. So in that respect, that's why I said it would be painful to see a mother or a father having to come into court and point at their son, no matter what, you know, he's accused of. Last quick question. A lot of people are saying the roommate has exposure, and the fact is that this guy texted to his roommate, remember when I was engraving the bullets. Can you set the record straight on what your duty to respond is as a basic civilian, not a public figure, not a teacher, not a government employee, just a roommate? Do you have any duty to call police if you see someone engraving bullets?
Absolutely. You have a duty. Hear something, say something, see something, say something. As soon as those text messages came through, he had a duty to call the police department. That was made very clear by the governor of that state and the police and the investigators. And, you know, I think he did the right thing from what I can tell. I think he did notify the police. He handed over his text messages. He did not conceal them. And so I do not believe he will be charged. I believe he fully cooperated.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, morally, yes, of course, we all have a duty. Legally, I don't think you can be charged unless you're, again, a public official. You have a duty to respond to something like that looks like imminent danger, you know, is ahead of you. But for that roommate, the texts look to me like the roommate was pretty damn shocked. Is this really you? Question mark, question mark, question mark. I mean, I think that's pretty strong evidence. Judge, it's really good to have you. I'm so sad about where we are as a nation and how some people celebrated this death and how others celebrated the death of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare worker. Like, I'm so tired of vigilante justice and those who support it, because there's no end to it. Once you jump in that bin, anybody's game, you know? If your message isn't palatable, well, then the next guy apparently is okay to perform the judge, jury, executioner duties, and that's really a sad state. I appreciate you being here.
Yes, it's a sad day in America, Ashley. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you, Judge. Judge Tarlika Nunes-Navarro, always good to have a judge on board. Okay, so still to come. Speaking of Luigi, this was one hell of a day for Team Luigi. Take a look at this. Yeah, this was pretty crazy. Out on the sidewalk of the courthouse in New York City, Luigi Mangione had a court hearing today, and he, of course, being another suspect in a premeditated assassination where an assassin scrawled messages onto the bullets that were used. But today, Luigi was handed a big win, and that got these people fired up. After the break, I'll tell you why Luigi may have to really savor this one win for a whole long time. All things considered, Luigi Mangione still has an awful lot to worry about. But today was indisputably a good day for him.
Free! Luigi! Free! Luigi! Free! Luigi! Free! Luigi!
To be very clear, the man facing both state and federal charges in the killing of the United Healthcare CEO is far from free, Luigi. And I mean light years away from being free. But today, a New York judge did side with his defense lawyers and said that prosecutors cannot charge Luigi Mangione with terrorism, which, by the way, was the basis for New York State to charge him with murder one. Judge said, and I quote, while the defendant was clearly expressing an animus toward UHC and the healthcare industry generally, it does not follow that his goal was to, quote, intimidate and coerce a civilian population, end quote. And indeed, there was no evidence presented of such a goal. That said, the state can and will continue to charge Luigi with second-degree murder, among other crimes, and the feds still plan to try him, as well as the Attorney General herself saying death penalty. She's leading the death penalty call for Luigi Mangione. I want to bring in Mark Eiglarsh, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Hey, Mark, so I read this extremely long omnibus response that the prosecutors had filed in this case, and it was very detailed, some of the things that they said. I don't know if everybody else can hear this weird echo. I think we have a weird... Does everybody else hear that? Maybe just me. But Mark, okay, good. Why did the judge see it this way? Because I saw plenty of language that looked like Luigi wanted to effect change in society by killing a guy at the top of the chain.
Yeah, better now than later. Look, I am no fan of Mangione and hope that he never gets out of prison. But if the judge didn't rule this way, likely after a conviction for first-degree murder, the appellate court would take it away, make us do this all over again. You know, if there's two reasonable hypotheses of innocence, meaning, okay, there's an explanation that this was a targeted hit on one individual because he didn't like this guy and what he stood for, versus I want to commit an act of terrorism, then that's not enough in the criminal arena. So the judge, looking at all the evidence, actually found a lot of things that supported that it wasn't terrorism. So as a matter of law, he had to do what he did.
So I'm going to read something from Luigi's own alleged, it's still evidence that hasn't been adjudicated, but his manifesto, his writings, his journal. And it said, one should whack the CEO at the annual parasitic bean counter convention. It's targeted and precise, and it doesn't risk innocence. And then Alvin Bragg said, the shooting itself speaks volumes of the defendant's intent. Defendant chose to shoot the CEO of the United States' largest healthcare insurance company in front of the hotel where the company was about to conduct its annual investor conference. His goal in assassinating Thompson was to, quote, send a message, which was underscored by the messages in the accused that the accused allegedly left in the bullet casings: deny, depose, delay. I mean, to the untrained eye, that would be me, without a JD. Right. It sounds like he was trying to send a message to a CEO and maybe all the other CEOs and all the investors: change your ways, because this is what'll happen. I still don't understand why the judge says there's not enough evidence.
Yeah. Because you may be right, by the way. You may be absolutely correct that may possibly have been his intention. The way the criminal arena works, and not the court of public opinion, but the way the criminal arena works is by evidence. And the judge looked through all of the evidence, and it seems by his own writing that terrorism was inconsistent with his plan. He specifically ruled out bombing anyone because he wrote bombing equals terrorism. He didn't want that. So again, while it's possible, and you may be right, and prosecutors may be right, we go by evidence in the criminal arena, and unfortunately, the judge needed to do that. But this thing is far from over. These people doing these victory dances, idiots with these green Luigi hats and who made signs when there are plenty of causes out there for them to be involved with, they still can give him a life sentence in state court, and he's facing the death penalty over in the federal arena.
Yeah, and I tend to think that it's not going to go as well, and I assume that his attorneys are going to petition the federal system to do away with the death penalty as the choice of punishment, and I'm not so sure that they're going to prevail. Perhaps there. Depends on what the judge says. Let me ask you this. Luigi was in scrubs. You know, he was in scrubs. He wasn't in civilian clothing. I couldn't figure that one out why, because up until now, every time he's been appearing in court, they've made sure that, you know, these pictures go everywhere, all over the internet, everybody sees them, and they've made sure to make him look as neutral as possible. When you're wearing jailhouse scrubs, you look like a felon. Why do you think they did that this time and not the other times?
Oh, I don't know. And I say this with love. Who cares? I mean, really, right? In the court of law, ultimately, they'll make him look nice when he goes to trial, if that ever does happen. Maybe they thought he looked good in this outfit. Maybe they didn't get to the, clothing to him on time. But, I'm so tired of these people who are attracted to his shell, who somehow, I think, unfortunately, may wind up being stealth jurors. That's what scares me as an ambassador to the criminal arena, that some of these people will find their way on the jury service and may, in spite of the evidence, because they feel that the killing of a father of a 16 and a 19-year-old son, these kids will never see their father again, that somehow that might be justified. It's abhorrent, and these people really need help.
Yeah, I say it again. Two things I can say without any challenge: puppies are cute and murder is bad. And I worry that stealth jurors it's going to be a term we have to start really, dealing with as we go forward to prosecute the Luigi Mangiones of the world, the Tyler Robinsons of the world. And I pray, although I know it's useless, that there aren't going to be a whole lot more of them. I think there will be a whole lot more of these people radicalized by their feeds. Hey, Mark, thank you. Hope to see you again soon. Appreciate this.
Same here. Thank you.
Mark Eiglarsh, always with such great insight when it comes to American jurisprudence. Straight ahead, a new and stunning allegation in a case involving dirty cops, underage sex abuse, and the murder of a pregnant mistress that was staged to look like a suicide. At the center of it all, this young victim, Sandra Birchmore. Tonight, we're learning that an ex-cop accused of grooming Sandra when she was just a teenager contacted her on the very day that she was killed. And not just any ex-cop, a former deputy police chief. Now, why would that be? And is that deputy chief being investigated in the murder? That story's next. It's been more than 4.5 years since Sandra Birchmore, then 23 years old and 3 months pregnant, was found hanging in her apartment in Canton, Massachusetts. But it is the decade of exploitation and deceit and corruption that came before that turned what looked like a simple suicide into an all-out murder case brought by the feds, and a lawsuit brought by Sandra's family, and multiple investigations and hearings involving police in the neighboring town of Stoughton. That's where Sandra joined the Young Explorers program when she was just 13. It's a program for kids who, want to get a taste of police work. The man charged with Sandra's murder, Matthew Farwell, was a Stoughton cop and a mentor in the Explorers program. But before he was hit with those charges, Sandra's family filed a lawsuit accusing him and 2 other Stoughton cops of, and I quote, grooming and repeated sexual assaults against Sandra over the course of a decade. Those other 2 cops, now former cops, are Matthew Farwell's brother, William Farwell, and Robert Devine, the former deputy chief of the Stoughton Police Department and leader of the Explorer program. Both men deny wrongdoing, and neither has been charged with any crime connected to Sandra. But for months now, Devine has been the subject of a secret disciplinary set of hearings, and the Boston Globe just unearthed a bombshell from a closed-door hearing in June. The authorities, or the Globe says authorities now believe that former Deputy Chief Devine contacted, that's the word they used, contacted Sandra Birchmore on the very same day that she died, February 1st, 2021. It's unclear what form that alleged contact took, or what was said in the contact, or even whether Birchmore responded to Deputy Chief Devine. We do know Matthew Farwell is alleged to have strangled Birchmore that evening, February 1st, and we know he's seen on video surveillance entering and leaving her apartment building. We know that Sandra believed, or at least claimed, that Matthew Farwell was the father of her unborn baby, and Farwell apparently believed that he was. But the Globe reported earlier this year that DNA tests proved otherwise. The baby's father's true identity has not yet been revealed, and it may not be known. Matthew Farwell's murder trial hasn't yet been scheduled, but video recordings of the hearings for Robert Devine at Deputy Chief, they're being prepped for public release, and they could drop any day now. So, as I often say, watch this space. When we come back, the choices that kids make when parents are no longer together, and I do not mean because of divorce. I mean when one parent kills the other parent. In a surprising number of cases, adult kids support or side with or vehemently champion the killers of their other parent. Take, for instance, Chad Daybell's 5 adult kids. He killed their mom amidst an affair with the woman he married just weeks later. Oh, and he also killed that new wife's kids and buried them in his backyard. It's loyalty that defies all logic, and we're digging into it next. If you were with us last night, you know 3-time killer and former doomsday prophet Chad Daybell is now posting letters from death row in Idaho. But he's not doing it alone. He's making use of a website created by his adult daughter, Emma Daybell Murray, whose mother, Tammy Daybell, was one of Chad's murder victims, killed in her own bed so that Chad would be free to marry Lori Vallow, with whom he was having an affair. By the way, they were married just weeks later with wedding rings that they had bought while Tammy was still alive. So, yeah, you could say this wedding was a little more planned than usual. So the happy couple also murdered Lori's 2 children and buried them in Chad's backyard. No matter. Chad's daughter, Emma, and at least some of her 4 siblings still stand by their dad and have done so since the very beginning, when detectives were digging up the children's bodies while Chad was seated in the back seat of a police cruiser.
That's what they told me, that they found human remains. And I said, well, there are several dogs that have been buried there. And he said, respectfully, Emma, I can tell the difference. It's human remains. And I asked, where was it? And he said, over by the pond under that tree. But it was in the ground and had boards over it.
Okay.
But that didn't. Jason and I have walked all over there.
Yeah.
And I can see in your face that surprised you.
Yeah, I'm not coming back. So all that stuff that's in the baby room is Lori's and mine. The suitcases, you'll see. Any other questions you have?
I think, well, it sounds like you're not going to be out.
Right.
All of this got us wondering how many other convicted killers have their own Emmas, children who support them even after they murdered that child's other parent. Alex Murdaugh does. His oldest son, Buster, stayed loyal even after Alex was convicted of murdering Buster's mother, Maggie, and his little brother, Paul. And do you remember Betty Broderick? All 4 of her children kept up some level of contact even after Betty fatally shot their father, Dan, and his new wife as well, Linda. That was back in '89. 2 of the Broderick kids even pushed for Betty's release. And then there's the Jensen brothers. One of them did not support their father, Mark, after Mark murdered their mother, Julie, by lacing her drink with antifreeze. Very painful. But one brother did support Mark, his dad, even testified for his dad in his murder trial and pushed for his parole. Are you baffled? Because I sure am. My next guest can shed a little light on all of this. Scott Bond is a criminologist, author, and podcaster who's now on a national speaking tour called Serial Killers with Dr. Scott Bond. Scott, thanks so much for making time for me tonight, especially in your busy speaking circuit. Why do some kids cling to the killer parent, especially when there's overwhelming evidence that shows that parent did it?
Great question, Ashleigh, and it does seem on the surface quite strange. But I've long been of the belief that the children of killers are themselves victims, especially in cases of familicide and mass murder. Now, what Emma Murray and the other children in cases that you were talking about have in common is, I would say, that they are twice victims. Once by finding out that their beloved parent is apparently a murderer, and then secondly, because that parent murdered their other beloved parent. So they're actually suffering trauma twice. Just imagine finding that out and what that would do to you in your psychological state and your emotional state. So I don't think it's unusual that the child would actually gravitate toward and seek to protect the one surviving parent, despite all of the evidence against them. I think it's almost human nature to have that kind of protection. And I've lost my other parent, I can't lose this one too. Now, that's especially true, and I think these children are susceptible when you have that parent who's apparently a killer, who also happens to be a manipulative con man, psychopath, and narcissist like Chad Daybell.
Yes, that was my next question. Does the killer parent also manipulate and groom the children to make them believe he's innocent of all of this and everybody else has the story wrong?
Well, yes, I don't know if I would use the word groom, but I definitely think that they use their bond to the child, the connection to the child, to sway them and try to get them to see the narrative, the picture that they want to present. And that's certainly true with Chad Daybell. He seems determined to paint a different picture of himself for the world than the rest of us, let's say, believe. And his daughter is the enabler here. She's enabling that to happen. So yes, I think he is exploiting her. I think he is manipulating her. I think that is a fairly accurate depiction.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they all say that Chad was framed. All of the 5 kids have said it on television. 2 of them have testified in court. I do want to ask you this. Do they really, in their heart of hearts, believe that parent is innocent, or do they just accept that the parent is guilty and forgive them because they love them?
Well, I think both could be true. They could be true in separate cases and even within the same case. In their heart of hearts, who wants to think that dad could have killed mom or mom could have killed dad? So I think they really want to believe this. But at another level, being rational people, as I'm sure most of them are, the facts speak for themselves. So they may be in a bit of denial. They may be in a bit of a delusional state. And then once again, if that parent is highly manipulative and a con man like Chad Daybell, then they're going to be very susceptible to that persuasion.
It's mystifying. I'm glad I'm never in those shoes, and I pity those who are. Dr. Bond, always good to have you. Thank you so much for this, and I do want to give you the props on the show that you're doing. If anybody is out and about this Saturday night, Dr. Scott Bond's national speaking tour, Serial Killers with Dr. Scott Bond, is in Jamestown, New York, and for all of the cities and the dates and the tickets, you can go to his website. It's DocBonn, DocBonn.com. My great thanks to Dr. Scott Bond, and still ahead tonight. If Top Shelf and Iron Chef and Chopped and The Bear have taught us anything, it's that the restaurant business is really tough, and so are chefs. And when the pressure's on, they sometimes make awful decisions. Case in point, police say a celebrity chef from California had better develop a taste for prison food after helping himself to a crime buffet. I'm dishing it all up next. Harry Truman told us if we can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. My dad said that all the time. But Truman did not say rob a bank, which should go without saying. But police in San Francisco say a prominent local chef did just that 3 times in one day. Valentino Luchin allegedly served up notes demanding cash at 3 separate banks, one after the other, and made off with an undisclosed amount. With help from the community, he was ID'd within hours and tracked down soon after that. He is charged tonight with robbery and attempted robbery. And get this, he's been down this road before. In 2018, Luchin admitted to robbing a bank with a BB gun and was sentenced to 1 whole year in the county jail and 3 years probation. And back then, he said he was robbing banks because it was easier than running a successful restaurant. But he was wrong about that, too. Quick note about my podcast, Drop Dead Serious. If you haven't checked it out, check it out for sure, because I just had a very long conversation with John Ramsey, the father of John Benet Ramsey, and we've got some news to share about DNA found on the garrote that was used to kill John Benet, and testing that shows it's male DNA. Big, long conversation about what the authorities have said to John, what they won't say to John, what they're doing, what they're not doing, and that's what drives me crazy. He also shared some stories about what happened back in the day after he and Patsy were just like zeroed in on. And actually, there's some really sweet stuff that happened amid just a cesspool of hate. You've got to check out the podcast again. It's Drop Dead Serious. The audio drops at midnight Pacific today, and the video 8 in the morning tomorrow morning. Cuomo's next.